How can you accuse him of stealing before he has even spoken? Daniel Mercer asked as Vanessa Cole pressed a red disqualified card across Eli Brooks's name and reached for the power cord. The 3 model bulbs went dark. Eli, 12 and trembling, pointed at the last equation circled twice above a black notebook. Dr. Evelyn Shaw glanced from the formula to the silent model. He doesn't understand it, Vanessa said smoothly.
Eli swallowed.
I can show you. 3 hours earlier, Franklin Public Middle School's gym smelled of floor wax, damp cardboard, and overheated extension cords. Fluorescent lights hummed above rows of polished displays while Daniel pushed a yellow mop bucket along the back wall, his dark blue maintenance shirt already marked with a pale streak of plaster dust. Near the storage room doors, rainwater tapped through a ceiling seam and struck the floor beside a folding table no one had bothered to move. Eli's project sat there half in shadow. Its board was plain white foam, its letters cut by hand, its wiring visible beneath a clear plastic cover. At the center, 3 small bulbs waited beneath a thick arrow drawn from a final line of mathematics. The equation had been circled once in pencil, then again with a shaking hand. Daniel noticed the water first. He always noticed what could hurt someone before he noticed what might impress them. He parked the mop bucket, moved the extension cord away from the wet tile, and slid a plastic catch pail beneath the leak. Eli watched him without speaking, one arm wrapped around the black notebook. Your table leg is loose, Daniel said.
Eli nodded.
Daniel crouched, tightened the old bolt with the small wrench he carried on his belt, then stood without touching the model. Across the gym, Vanessa welcomed donors with a practiced smile. Richard Hale stood beside her beneath a blue banner that read science for every student, one hand resting on his son's glossy display. Their voices were low, but Daniel saw Vanessa glance toward Eli's corner twice. At 8:12, before the judging panel had taken their seats, she crossed the floor holding a red card. She told Eli there had been a concern about plagiarism. She said, the language gently, as though kindness could soften a verdict already printed in capital letters. Eli tried to open his notebook. Vanessa placed 2 fingers over it. We don't need to make this harder than it is. Daniel stopped several feet away. He did not interrupt. Not yet. Vanessa signed the card, pinned it over Eli's name, and instructed a volunteer to disconnect the model. That was when Daniel heard the fan inside the housing wind down and saw Eli's finger rise toward the circled equation. Dr. Shaw had just entered the gym. Principal Martin Reed was checking the schedule on his phone. Every person with authority was close enough to see, but no one moved until Daniel placed his mop against the wall. Vanessa turned. Mr. Mercer, this is an academic matter. Daniel lifted the corner of the red card just enough to uncover Eli's name. He did not remove it. Then it should follow an academic process. Reed frowned. Please return to your assigned area. Richard gave Daniel a sympathetic smile that never reached his eyes. The boy can try again next year. Daniel looked at Eli, then at the equation. He had not seen that arrangement of load values in years, yet one term was different, simpler, almost childlike, and somehow more elegant. He kept that recognition to himself. Give him 5 minutes, Daniel said. Not me. Him. Dr. Shaw stepped closer, her expression skeptical rather than kind. Do you have evidence beyond a feeling? Daniel turned the red card toward her. The metal clip clicked against the board. In the upper corner, beneath Vanessa's signature, the timestamp read 8:12 a.m. The official judging schedule taped to the nearby table began at 8:30. Daniel's eyes moved back to Vanessa. Her smile remained steady, but for the first time, Dr. Shaw stopped looking at the janitor and looked at the clock. Dr. Shaw looked from the timestamp to the wall clock, then back to Vanessa. Who authorized this? The concern was urgent. Before judging began, Vanessa's smile softened, not enough to seem nervous, only enough to suggest patience with people who did not understand procedure. The gym lights gave everything a pale, unforgiving color. Beneath them, the red disqualified card seemed brighter than the student projects, brighter even than Eli's name it had been placed over. Principal Reed stepped between the table and the growing cluster of parents. Let's not turn this into a spectacle, he said. Mr. Mercer, please return to your assigned area. Daniel did not move. Not because he wanted a confrontation, but because a drop of water had landed beside the power strip again. He bent, shifted the cord 2 inches farther from the damp tile, and placed the yellow caution sign where no child would trip over it. Only then did he look at Reed. The judging schedule says 8:30. We can all read a schedule. Then we should follow it. That's enough. The words were quiet, but they landed harder than a shout. A few feet away, someone whispered that Daniel was making trouble because he felt sorry for the boy. Another parent glanced at the worn knees of his work pants, the plaster dust on his sleeve, and the ring of keys hanging from his belt. Their eyes moved over him the way people inspected a tool they had not asked to use. Richard Hale stepped closer with the careful warmth of a man accustomed to being thanked. His navy jacket fit too well for the crowded gym, and the silver pin on his lapel bore the school foundation's crest. No one is trying to hurt the kid, he said. Sometimes the kindest thing is to keep a child from failing in public. Eli's fingers tightened around the black notebook. His cardboard cover bowed under the pressure. I didn't copy it, he said. His voice barely rose above the hum of the lights. Vanessa turned toward him at once. Eli, sweetheart, no one is calling you a bad person. She lowered herself slightly, though not enough to meet his eyes. We're saying the work may have come from somewhere you don't fully understand. That happens. Adults help too much. Websites make things look simple. There is no shame in being confused. Eli opened his mouth. Vanessa placed one hand lightly on the edge of his display board. You don't have to defend yourself right now. Daniel saw the boy's eyes fall to the floor, not to the equation, not to the model, to the gray tile between his shoes, where a thin line of water reflected the red card above him. The cruelty was not in Vanessa's volume. It was in how gently she replaced Eli's words with her own. He said he understands it, Daniel said. Reed exhaled through his nose. You are not his teacher. No, you are not a judge. No. Then stop interfering. For a moment, the only sound near the back wall was the steady tap of water into the plastic pail Daniel had placed beneath the leak. Lily stood beyond the rope divider with the unopened bottle of water held against her chest. She had heard adults speak to her father that way before, slowly, as if the uniform reduced not only what he earned but what he could know. She did not step forward. She did not call out. She only watched him straighten the corner of Eli's display where the foam board had begun to bend. Vanessa motioned to a volunteer. Please move this to review holding. The volunteer looked uncertain. Where? The table by the storage doors. That's where the roof is leaking, Daniel said. We'll put a tray under it. There's already water near the outlet. Facilities can handle that. The last 2 words made several people glance at Daniel. The mistake had been made by the ceiling, the placement, and the organizer, but somehow responsibility had arrived at his feet. Daniel pulled the folding table away from the wet area himself. One metal leg scraped across the floor with a sharp cry that turned heads across the gym. He checked the loose bolt, felt it shift beneath his thumb, and tightened it with the small wrench from his belt. He did not touch the model. He did not remove the red card. He only made sure the table would not collapse beneath the work everyone else had already decided was worthless. Richard watched him and gave a small, approving nod, as though Daniel had finally returned to the kind of usefulness expected from him. There you go, Richard said. Let the professionals sort out the rest. Daniel slipped the wrench back into his pocket. The boy built the project. Richard's expression remained pleasant. And no one is denying his effort. You're denying his voice. The sentence was not loud. That was why it traveled. Dr. Shaw's eyes shifted toward Eli, then toward the black notebook, then back to Vanessa. You said the panel agreed to disqualify him. They were informed of the concern. That is not what I asked. Vanessa folded her hands at her waist. The decision required immediate action. We couldn't risk an ineligible project being evaluated beside original work. Who signed the ruling? I did on behalf of the process. Reed stepped in again. Dr. Shaw, this can be reviewed privately. We have donors arriving, students waiting, and a schedule to protect. Daniel looked past him at the printed floor plan taped to the registration table. Eli's project number had been written in blue ink in the second row, close to the judging lane. A black line crossed it out. Beside it, in different handwriting, someone had written storage wall. When was his table moved? Daniel asked. Vanessa answered without looking at the plan. The outlet at his assigned station failed this morning. Daniel turned his head toward the second row. At that exact station, a coffee warmer glowed red beneath a volunteer's paper cup. Dr. Shaw followed his gaze. The outlet was working. For the first time, Vanessa's hand tightened around the clipboard, and Daniel realized the project had not been moved because something was broken. It had been moved because someone wanted it where fewer people would see it. Daniel kept his eyes on the glowing coffee warmer across the gym. The outlet Vanessa had called defective was carrying power without so much as a flicker. Beside him, Eli's table stood under the weak light near the storage doors, one repaired leg planted on a strip of damp gray tile. That station works, Dr. Shaw said. Vanessa glanced toward it, then down at her clipboard. It may have been intermittent earlier. Was a maintenance report filed? I'm sure facilities can check. Daniel could feel the attention shift toward him again, not because anyone expected an answer, but because the word facilities had turned him into the nearest place to leave the problem. He walked to the registration table and examined the floor plan without touching it. Eli's project number had been crossed out in black ink. The replacement note, storage wall, leaned sharply to the right, pressed hard enough to leave an indentation through the paper. No repair ticket came through, Daniel said. Reed's expression tightened. Then we'll review it later. The water won't wait until later. Daniel returned to Eli's corner, moved the plastic catch pail until the leak struck its center, then wiped the wet edge of the folding table with a clean shop towel. The act was so ordinary that most of the adults stopped watching. That was how Daniel preferred to help. Quietly, before anyone could turn kindness into a performance. Eli remained beside him, still holding the black notebook against his ribs. Is the model damaged? Daniel asked. Eli shook his head. The fan stopped too fast when they pulled the plug. That's what fans do. Not this one. Daniel looked at him. Eli swallowed, then opened the notebook to a page crowded with pencil lines and small corrections. It stores a little charge. It should have coasted longer. Daniel did not lean over the equation. He checked the power cord instead, running 2 fingers along the insulated casing without opening the housing. Near the plug, the plastic had been bent sharply, as though someone had wrapped it too tightly around a hand. We'll leave it disconnected until the judges are ready, he said. You don't want to test it? It's your project. Eli looked down at the notebook. Nobody thinks that. Daniel folded the damp towel once and set it on the edge of the pail. Then don't give them your answer before they ask the question. Lily appeared at the rope divider, still holding the water bottle. Dad. Daniel walked over. She looked past him at Eli, then at the red card hanging crooked over the boy's name. Is he in trouble? She asked. People are deciding too fast. Lily turned the unopened bottle in her hands. A small grocery store label had begun to peel from the cold plastic. Can he have this? Daniel took the bottle, checked that Eli was watching, and held it out rather than placing it among the evidence on the table. Eli accepted it with both hands. Thanks. Lily nodded, satisfied with the size of the problem she could solve, and returned to the folding chair near the wall. Daniel watched her go. In his shirt pocket, his phone vibrated once. A rent reminder glowed on the cracked screen, followed by a message from the after-school program confirming Lily's reduced pickup fee was due Friday. He turned the phone face down and slipped it away. The old watch on his wrist, the one his wife had given him before Lily was born, had stopped again at 6:17. He had been meaning to repair it for months. He could repair almost anything except the parts of life that required more money than patience. Mr. Mercer. Dr. Shaw had approached without him noticing. Her eyes moved from the repaired table leg to the untouched model, then to the black notebook. You said he should be allowed to explain it. Have you been teaching him? No. Have you helped build the circuit? No. Vanessa joined them, her tone gentle. Daniel has been very kind to Eli. He lets students use discarded supplies from the maintenance room. Sometimes children mistake support for collaboration. He gave me a meter, Eli said. Vanessa smiled at him. Exactly. That is still assistance. Daniel saw Eli's shoulders fold inward. He could have corrected the implication by explaining what he knew, where he had worked, how many systems he had designed before his life narrowed to late shifts and school hallways. Instead, he reached under the table and tightened the second loose brace. I gave him a tool, he said. He decided what to measure. Vanessa's smile held. A distinction that may matter to adults, but not necessarily to competition rules. Then the rules should say so. They do. Show him where. For a moment, Vanessa did not answer. Dr. Shaw noticed. She extended her hand toward Eli. May I see the notebook?
Eli hesitated.
Daniel did not tell him what to do. He waited until the boy made the choice himself. Eli opened the cover and placed the notebook in her hands. The cardboard was softened at the corners, the binding reinforced with clear tape. Dr. Shaw turned the first page carefully. There were dates in the upper right corner, each followed by measurements, failed guesses, and corrections. On one page, a brown scorch mark had eaten through the edge of the paper. On another, a relay number had been crossed out 3 times. Anyone can write dates afterward, Vanessa said. Of course, Dr. Shaw replied. She did not sound convinced by either side. Daniel noticed the notebook was shedding a thin flake of black cardboard near the spine. He caught it before it fell into the dampness and placed it inside the cover. Behind the last page, an old receipt had been folded into quarters. Eli reached for it, embarrassed. That's nothing. Daniel did not open it. He simply passed it to Dr. Shaw. The thermal paper was faded, but the date remained visible beside a list of used electrical parts and a total of $6.43. Where did this come from? She asked. A surplus store, Eli said. Mr. Mercer showed me the bin. I paid from my lunch money. Vanessa gave a small sigh. Children keep receipts for all kinds of things. Daniel looked at the scorch mark again, then at the relay stamped with a faded manufacturer code beneath the clear cover. The code matched one line on the receipt. Dr. Shaw saw it too. Her expression changed only slightly, but she turned back to the first page and began comparing the dates in silence. Then Eli shifted the notebook, and 3 torn holes appeared along the inner binding where pages had once been stapled. Daniel touched none of them. He only asked, what was removed? Eli looked toward Vanessa before answering. The 3 pages she took for the safety check. The kindness everyone had dismissed as a janitor fixing a broken table had preserved the notebook long enough for its missing pages to become the first thing the room could no longer ignore. The 3 torn staple holes changed the room more than Daniel's words had. Dr. Shaw turned the notebook toward the fluorescent light, careful not to bend the softened spine. Vanessa remained beside her, composed, one hand resting on the clipboard against her waist. A safety review, she said. That is all. Where are the pages now? Dr. Shaw asked. I don't recall keeping them. Did you return them? I review dozens of student materials. Her answer was reasonable enough to prevent the room from choosing sides. Teachers collected drafts. Coordinators checked wiring diagrams. Children misplaced papers. A damaged notebook and a fading receipt did not prove theft, and Dr. Shaw treated them exactly as they were. Details requiring verification, not permission to accuse. She looked at Daniel. You have handled the table, the cord, the receipt, and the notebook. The notebook only when the cover started shedding. And you supplied some of the parts. I showed him a surplus bin. You understand how that may appear. Daniel did. A former engineer in a maintenance uniform had given a quiet boy access to electrical components, then stepped forward when the project was challenged. To someone looking only at the surface, it could resemble hidden adult assistance as easily as kindness. He did not defend himself with his resume. He did not mention the systems he had once designed or the years he had spent reading diagrams more complex than anything in the gym. He simply nodded. Check everything I touched. The answer made Dr. Shaw pause, not because it proved his innocence, but because he had offered scrutiny instead of asking for trust. Vanessa adjusted the clipboard beneath her arm. That would be wise. We need to protect Eli as well as the integrity of the event. Eli's breathing grew shallow. His thumb rubbed the peeled corner of the water bottle label Lily had given him. I didn't ask him to build it, he said. No one said you did, Vanessa replied. I asked him questions. Children often don't realize when an adult has guided them too far. He told me to write down what failed. That is still guidance. Daniel watched Eli's eyes drop again. Vanessa's tone never sharpened. She made each sentence sound like concern, and each expression of concern left the boy with less ownership over his own memory. Dr. Shaw closed the notebook halfway. Eli, I need you to answer without looking at Mr. Mercer. When did Ms. Cole take the pages? Eli stared at the clear tape along the notebook's binding. The day before projects were due. During class. After. What did she say? That she needed to check the relay spacing. Vanessa nodded as if this confirmed her. Count. Electrical clearance. Exactly. Daniel's eyes moved to the display board. The public diagram showed only 3 bulbs, the main line, and the final equation. It did not show the relay arrangement inside the covered housing. He kept the thought to himself. Dr. Shaw asked the event secretary to bring the science room access log and the copier records. Reed stepped closer, lowering his voice. Evelyn. This is turning a student fair into an investigation. A student was publicly disqualified before judging, she said. It already became one. No one answered that. Around them, the rest of the gym continued in fragments. Tape ripped from a dispenser. A child rehearsed a volcano presentation near the bleachers. Somewhere near the entrance, coffee spilled and filled the air with a bitter roasted smell. Yet the back corner had become still enough to hear water striking the plastic pail 1 drop at a time. The secretary returned carrying a thin binder and a tablet. The room use log showed Eli's name on Tuesdays and Thursdays for 6 consecutive weeks. Each entry had been initialed by the evening custodian assigned to the science wing, not Daniel. Vanessa leaned closer. Those reservations do not identify the project. He could have been working on regular assignments. Dr. Shaw nodded. That is possible. Eli looked up. I tested the first version there. Do you have anything from those sessions? The notebook. Anything independent of the notebook? He shook his head. Daniel noticed a narrow strip of paper caught beneath the binder clip. May I ask one question? Reed's mouth tightened, but Dr. Shaw said, 1. Daniel pointed without touching. What time was the safety review? Vanessa answered first. Late afternoon. What time? Around 4. The secretary opened the copier audit on the tablet. Rows of numbers appeared beneath the harsh white light. User account, page count, destination, timestamp. Vanessa's staff login had scanned 3 pages at 4:18 p.m. on the day before the deadline. The file had then been sent to a shared folder used by the science fair committee. Dr. Shaw enlarged the thumbnail. Even at that size, 3 dark shapes were visible. Along one edge of the scan, Daniel asked the secretary to increase the brightness. She slid the control upward. The image washed pale until the torn paper fibers appeared against the copier glass. And beside them, 3 crescent-shaped shadows matched the damaged staple holes in Eli's notebook. That confirms the pages were scanned, Dr. Shaw said. It does not confirm improper use. Vanessa gave a small, relieved nod. Exactly. I scanned them for the safety record, then placed them in the committee folder. Standard documentation. Why the shared folder? That is where we keep review materials. Who could access it? Faculty, judges, approved volunteers, donors. Reed asked. Vanessa glanced toward Richard before answering. Some foundation accounts have event access, but not to confidential student work. The tablet chimed as the secretary opened the permissions list. Richard shifted his weight. His polished shoe covered the edge of the black line on the floor plan taped beneath the clipboard. Vanessa reached toward the screen. We should not display account names publicly. Dr. Shaw angled the tablet away from her. No one is accusing anyone. I know. I'm protecting privacy. Her hand remained suspended for half a second before returning to the clipboard. Eli spoke without looking up. She said she didn't scan them. Vanessa's expression did not change. I said I did not remember whether I scanned or reviewed them at the table. You said you didn't remember keeping them. That is different. It was different, technically. The distinction was small enough to sound defensible and sharp enough to reveal how carefully she was choosing each word. Daniel looked again at the copier record. The file name was not Eli's project number. It read grid_final, a phrase nowhere on his public board. Who named the file? He asked. Vanessa answered too quickly. The scanner probably pulled it from the header on the 3 pages. Eli raised his head. There wasn't a header. The words were quiet, but the secretary stopped scrolling. Dr. Shaw turned the tablet toward the enlarged scan. No header appeared at the top, only pencil calculations and the torn edge of the paper. Daniel's gaze moved from the file name to the sealed model, then to Vanessa's clipboard. She had called the project an adaptive load balancer before anyone opened the notebook. Now she knew a title that had never been written on the pages she claimed to have scanned. And beneath the access list, one account had opened the file at 11:47 the following night. The account that opened the file at 11:47 p.m. belonged to the Hale Foundation. For one suspended second, no one moved. The secretary's finger hovered above the tablet. Richard Hale's face remained composed, but the hand resting near his jacket button closed slowly into a fist. Foundation accounts are shared, he said. Staff use them for event logistics. Vanessa nodded at once. Which is exactly why we should not draw conclusions from a single access record. Agreed, Dr. Shaw said. She lowered the tablet and placed it face down on the registration table. The click of its glass against the laminate sounded final, though nothing had been decided. This proves only that someone using that account opened the file. It does not prove who, why, or whether Eli created the work. Richard's shoulders loosened slightly. Reed glanced toward the entrance, where more parents were arriving beneath wet umbrellas. Then we should continue this privately. Not yet, Dr. Shaw said. She looked at Eli's silent model. There is one question we can answer here. Vanessa's smile returned, careful and professional. Evelyn, the child has already been placed under unnecessary pressure. He was publicly disqualified before he was evaluated, because the work raised legitimate concerns. Then the work should be tested. The air conditioner switched on above the bleachers, pushing a cold draft across the gym. A paper corner lifted on a nearby display, fluttering against a row of polished trophies. Eli stared at the clear plastic cover over his circuit. What kind of test? He asked. Dr. Shaw walked to the judging table and picked up a digital meter from the equipment case. A limited one. No changes to the design. No coaching. I choose the load condition, and you write down what the system should do before power is restored. Vanessa stepped closer. That is not part of the published competition procedure. Neither was disqualifying him 18 minutes before judging. Reed rubbed the bridge of his nose. Richard spoke softly. We should be careful not to confuse performance under stress with authorship. We should, Dr. Shaw replied, which is why this test will not settle authorship. It will tell us whether the boy understands the project he has been accused of not understanding. Daniel watched Eli's fingers tighten around the pencil resting beside the notebook. The boy's breathing shortened. His shoulders rose toward his ears. Around him, adults were turning his work into a courtroom, and every face seemed to be waiting for the wrong answer. Daniel moved to the side of the table, far enough from the model that everyone could see both of his hands. Mr. Mercer, Vanessa said, please step away. He took another step back. Seal it first. Dr. Shaw looked at him. Daniel pointed toward the clear cover. If you test it, mark the screws. Then nobody can say someone changed the circuit. It was not a brilliant suggestion. It was the kind of ordinary precaution he used when checking control panels after a maintenance call. Dr. Shaw understood its value immediately. She asked the secretary for tamper tape, pressed a narrow strip across each corner screw, then signed the tape with a black marker. She handed the marker to Reed, who added his initials. Vanessa watched the process with her lips pressed into a polite line. This is becoming unnecessarily dramatic. It is becoming documented, Daniel said. Dr. Shaw placed the meter beside the model and chose the center bulb. I am removing this load. She unscrewed the bulb herself, set it on a folded cloth, and positioned the meter leads where the judges could see them. Eli, do not touch the device yet. Write the expected readings. Eli looked at the notebook, then at the meter, then toward Daniel. Vanessa noticed. No signals from Mr. Mercer. Daniel kept his gaze on Eli's face rather than the equations. What number do you want them to watch first? Vanessa turned sharply. That is coaching. Dr. Shaw raised one hand.
No.
Is a request for sequence, not an answer.
Eli Svalloved.
His pencil trembled over the paper. The output on the left branch, he said. Write it. He bent over the table. The pencil scratched once, stopped, then moved again. He wrote 2 figures, crossed out the second, and began breathing faster. Daniel could see panic reaching him, not because he did not know the system, but because he knew every correction would be interpreted as guilt. Daniel spoke quietly. You're allowed to think. Eli closed his eyes for one breath. Then he wrote the final values and pushed the paper toward Dr. Shaw. She read them without reaction and turned the page face down. Now restore power. Eli reached for the switch. His fingertip paused above it. The gym had not gone fully silent, but the sounds had thinned. A chair stopped scraping near the bleachers. A mother lowered her phone. Even the volunteer at the coffee station froze with a paper cup halfway to his mouth. Eli pressed the switch. The small fan inside the housing spun to life. The center socket remained empty. The 2 remaining bulbs flashed bright, dimmed for less than a second, then settled into a steady white glow. The meter numbers climbed, dipped, and stopped. Dr. Shaw looked at the display, then at Eli's paper. They matched. Not approximately. Exactly. Vanessa folded her arms. A rehearsed condition proves very little. Dr. Shaw said nothing. She removed the left bulb instead, shifted the meter leads, and covered Eli's notebook with a sheet of blank paper. Second condition. Eli looked startled. That wasn't in my display plan. Good, Richard said almost too quickly. Then we'll see what he actually knows. Daniel's jaw tightened, but he did not turn toward him. Eli studied the dark socket, the remaining branches, and the last equation on the board. This time he did not look at Daniel. He wrote one number, paused, added another, then slid the page forward. Dr. Shaw restored power herself. The right bulb pulsed twice. The fan changed pitch, a thin metallic whine rising beneath the fluorescent hum. Then the reading stabilized. Dr. Shaw placed Eli's prediction beside the meter. Again the values matched. The whispering stopped completely. Somewhere behind the displays, a folding chair that had been dragging across the floor went still. The air conditioner became the loudest thing in the room. Eli released a breath he seemed to have been holding all morning. His shoulders lowered. Lily, still seated beyond the rope, gave him a small thumbs up before tucking her hand back into her sleeve. Daniel saw it and almost smiled. Dr. Shaw examined the tamper tape. None of the signatures had broken. She looked toward the ceiling camera above the storage corridor. Preserve the footage from 6 this morning onward, she told the secretary. And the camera facing this table.
No deletión, no overbrite.
Vanessa's voice remained calm, but one finger tapped against her clipboard. This still does not establish that Eli originated the design. No, Dr. Shaw said. It establishes that he understands it, that the circuit was not altered during the test, and that Mr. Mercer did not operate it for him. Richard adjusted his cuff. He could have trained the boy for weeks. Eli looked at Daniel, then back at the adults. He didn't give me the answers, he said. His voice was still quiet, but it no longer disappeared. He gave me a meter and told me to write down what failed. Daniel reached for the red disqualified card only when a draft from the air conditioner lifted one corner. He pressed it flat so it would not tear, preserving the accusation as carefully as the evidence that might undo it. He could have used the moment to embarrass Vanessa or Richard. Instead, he moved between Eli and the phones now rising around the table. No pictures of him, he said. Not until this is settled. Dr. Shaw watched him differently then. Not with trust, not yet, but with the recognition that Daniel was protecting the boy even when public attention had finally begun to turn in Eli's favor. Vanessa stepped closer to the model. The relay response should be inspected before anyone repeats this demonstration. Her eyes went to the sealed housing, especially the third relay. Daniel looked at the clear cover. The 3 relays were identical from the outside, and none was numbered where anyone in the gym could see. Dr. Shaw noticed his expression. Why the third one? She asked. Vanessa's hand stopped tapping. Because that is usually where adaptive switching fails. It was a plausible answer. Almost. But Daniel remembered Eli's missing pages, the private file name, and the technical term Vanessa had used before opening the notebook. The test had proven the boy understood his own machine. Vanessa's answer suggested someone else understood details that had never been displayed. And when Dr. Shaw requested the original drafts from both finalists, the first schematic from Richard Hale's son contained the same reversed relay notation Eli had crossed out weeks earlier. The reversed relay notation sat in the center of Richard Hale's son's schematic like a fingerprint no one had meant to leave behind. Dr. Shaw placed Eli's black notebook beside the polished presentation board and aligned the 2 pages under the fluorescent light. On Eli's early draft, the labels for relays 2 and 3 had been switched, then crossed out in pencil and corrected on the following page. On the competing schematic, the same labels were reversed, but the explanation beneath them described the corrected sequence. That could be coincidence, Richard said. It could, Dr. Shaw replied. So we verify it. Vanessa's clipboard shifted against her blouse. We should be careful about comparing a child's rough notes to a professionally formatted diagram. Common notation errors happen all the time. Daniel studied the 2 documents without touching either one. The mistake was small, almost ordinary. A person copying a final design might never reproduce it. A person copying an unfinished scan could. He looked at the 3 torn staple marks inside Eli's notebook, then at the copier record still open on the tablet. Which version was scanned? He asked. The secretary enlarged the thumbnail. The first page showed the reversed notation. The second contained Eli's partial correction. The third ended before the clean redraw. Dr. Shaw's finger stopped above the screen. The scan includes the mistake but not the completed correction. And this board includes the mistake, Daniel said, with an explanation. That only makes sense after the correction. Richard's jaw tightened. Are you accusing my son? No, Daniel's answer came before anyone else could speak. He turned slightly, putting his body between the competing student and the adults gathering around the table. The boy stood near the center aisle, pale and confused, looking toward his father for instructions. Children use what adults put in front of them, Daniel said. Ask the adults. The words did not clear Eli's name. They did something more difficult. They kept another child from becoming the easiest target in the room. Dr. Shaw noticed. Bring both original submission files, she told the secretary. Not printouts. I want creation dates, revision history, and device metadata. Reed lowered his voice. Evelyn, we have 200 people in this gym. Then perhaps someone should have considered that before placing a public accusation on a 12-year-old's project. The secretary connected the tablet to a small printer beneath the registration table. The machine woke with a mechanical whir, feeding out narrow sheets of audit data. Vanessa stepped closer. There may be privacy restrictions. There are, Dr. Shaw said. That is why the student names will be redacted from the public copy. The original records remain with the school. This is becoming disproportionate. A student was removed before evaluation, his private pages were scanned into a shared folder, and a finalist schematic contains the same abandoned error. Proportion is exactly what I am trying to establish. The printer continued until 6 pages lay between them. The first showed Eli's file history, a plain document created on a library computer 6 weeks earlier, revised in short sessions on Tuesdays and Thursdays, each entry matching the science room booking log. The second showed the competing project's polished presentation file created only 4 days before the fair. Its first saved version already contained the reversed relay notation. Who uploaded this? Dr. Shaw asked. Richard adjusted his cuff. Our design consultant helped the students prepare their boards. Name. The foundation works with several volunteers. Which one? I would have to check. His phone vibrated inside his jacket. He silenced it without looking at the screen. The motion was small, but sweat had begun to shine near his hairline despite the cold air from the vents. Vanessa leaned toward Dr. Shaw. This can be resolved without creating a scene. Let us separate the families, review the files privately, and issue a corrected decision if necessary. If necessary?
Eli repeated.
His voice was soft, but the word carried. Vanessa turned to him with practiced concern. Eli, no one wants you caught in an adult misunderstanding. Daniel saw the boy's shoulders begin to fold again. He rested one hand on the edge of the folding table, not on Eli, giving him something steady to look at. He is already in it, Daniel said, because adults put his name under that card. The printer stopped. In the sudden quiet, the ticking drip into the plastic pail became audible from across the corner. Dr. Shaw lifted the third audit page. The Hale Foundation account had opened the scanned file at 11:47 p.m. The access came from a registered mobile device, not a shared office computer. The device identifier ended in 6C4. The fourth page listed devices authorized under the Foundation account. One phone carried the same identifier. The registered owner was Richard Hale. Richard stared at the page. Those records can be misleading. Is that your device? Dr. Shaw asked. It is a Foundation phone. Assigned to whom? Me, but staff occasionally use it. At 11:47 at night? My assistant has access when deadlines require it. Vanessa spoke quickly. That is not unusual during event week. Daniel watched Richard fold his arms, covering the pocket where the phone had vibrated. He could have pushed then. He could have named the connection in front of every parent and forced Richard to answer while the evidence was fresh. Instead, he looked toward Eli. The boy was watching the floor again, surrounded by phones held at chest height. Daniel stepped into their sight lines. Put those down, he said. This is not entertainment. A few parents lowered their devices. One did not. Daniel moved just enough to block the camera without touching the person holding it. Lily watched from behind the rope, her small hands wrapped around the empty water bottle. She did not understand metadata or relay notation, but she understood that her father was refusing to let a frightened child become a spectacle. Dr. Shaw turned to the secretary. Preserve the access logs. Export them to a read-only drive. Include the permission history for the shared folder. Vanessa's fingers tightened around the top of her clipboard. There is no reason to imply a pattern where one mistake may explain everything. What pattern? Reed asked. Vanessa blinked. I mean a pattern of improper access. No one said there was one, Dr. Shaw replied. A faint flush rose along Vanessa's neck. She looked toward the ceiling camera over the registration area, then back to Reed. We should pause before this harms the school. Daniel noticed the direction of her glance. The copier sat beyond the science wing outside the gym under a different camera. If the file had been scanned at 4:18 and opened at 11:47, the records could show where the documents traveled. Was the copier area recorded that afternoon? He asked. Reed nodded slowly. The hallway cameras run continuously. Vanessa answered before the secretary could. That wing had maintenance interruptions last month. Daniel turned toward her. The outage was on the east stairwell. She looked at him. I was told several cameras were affected. Not the copier corridor. His voice remained even. He knew because he had replaced the power module himself after a winter failure and signed the service ticket when the feed returned. He did not say that yet. Dr. Shaw sent the secretary to request the footage and continued reviewing the files. The fifth audit page showed the competing presentation had been edited at 12:06 a.m., 19 minutes after Richard's phone opened Eli's scan. A new diagram had been inserted. Its internal image name was grid_relay_final, identical to the name Vanessa claimed the scanner had generated automatically. Richard wiped one thumb across the edge of his phone. My assistant may have downloaded reference material without understanding its source. Then, identify the assistant, Dr. Shaw said. I will. Now. I do not keep every employee's schedule in my head. The glass doors at the entrance reflected the group back at itself. Daniel in his worn blue uniform, Eli beside the dark model, Dr. Shaw holding the audit pages, Vanessa rigid behind her clipboard, Richard framed beneath the foundation banner. The image looked less like a science fair now and more like a system seeing its own machinery for the first time. The secretary returned, breathing harder than before. She held a school laptop against her chest. The camera file is there, she said. But 12 minutes are corrupted. Which 12? Dr. Shaw asked. 11:41 to 11:53. Richard looked down. Vanessa's eyes moved once more toward the ceiling camera, then away. Daniel felt the old watch against his wrist, still frozen at 6:17, and understood the choice before him. He could accuse them while the crowd was ready to believe the worst, or he could protect Eli by making the chain stronger than anger. He chose the slower road. Do not announce anything yet, he said. Preserve the damaged file, the server log, and the original drive. Reed stared at him. Why? Daniel looked toward the maintenance office beyond the gym doors, where service records for the school's electrical systems were kept in a locked metal cabinet. Because a corrupted camera file does not always mean the footage is gone. Dr. Shaw folded the audit pages and held them against the red disqualified card. Can it be recovered? Daniel did not promise what he could not prove. There may be a backup. Vanessa's calm finally cracked at the edges. There is no backup on that corridor. No one had told her which camera file they were discussing or how its storage had been configured. Dr. Shaw slowly turned toward her. By then, the evidence was no longer light enough to carry into a private office and close the door. The school auditorium had never been designed for silence. The ventilation rattled above the stage, folding seats creaked beneath shifting parents, and the old projector fan produced a steady mechanical whine. Yet when Daniel Mercer entered through the side aisle in his dark blue maintenance uniform, carrying a manila service folder beneath one arm, the room seemed to lower its voice around him. He did not look like a man arriving to win. He looked tired. A gray line of dust still marked one shoulder. His old watch remained frozen at 6:17, and the carpenter pencil in his shirt pocket had been sharpened down to half its length. Eli walked beside Dr. Evelyn Shaw, holding the black notebook against his chest. Lily followed Daniel to the second row and took his hand for only a moment before sitting beside him. On stage, the 3-bulb model rested beneath a clear cover on a plain folding table. The red disqualified card lay in front of it, sealed inside a transparent evidence sleeve. Principal Martin Reed stood behind the podium. Vanessa Cole sat at the end of the review table, composed in a cream-colored jacket, her clipboard replaced by a leather folder. Richard Hale occupied the chair beside her beneath the foundation banner his money had purchased. Dr. Shaw remained standing. She had not yet taken her place at the center of the table. She was waiting to see how each person behaved before the last evidence was opened. Reed adjusted the microphone. This is not a trial, he said. It is an administrative review intended to protect students, staff, and the integrity of Franklin Public Middle School. Vanessa lowered her eyes at the word students, performing concern without appearing defensive. Richard leaned toward his microphone. We all agree the children should not be harmed by adult confusion. His voice was smooth, patient, almost paternal. The Foundation account was used by multiple event volunteers. The file names were part of a shared preparation system. Any overlap between projects may have resulted from standard educational resources. A murmur moved through the auditorium. It was the first retention shift, the moment when a reasonable explanation gave people permission to doubt again. A shared account, common technical notation, overworked volunteers. No single villain, only a sequence of administrative mistakes. Vanessa lifted one hand. I also want to clarify that Eli's early removal was not punishment. It was a temporary protective action. His work appeared too advanced for the documentation available at the time, and I believed delaying his presentation would prevent public embarrassment. Eli stared at the sealed red card. Daniel could feel the boy's hand tighten around the notebook even from 2 seats away. You placed the accusation where everyone could read it, Dr. Shaw said. Vanessa turned toward her. The card used the approved competition language. At 8:12, Dr. Shaw nodded to the evidence screen. The first image appeared. The disqualified card, Vanessa's signature beneath the printed accusation, and the timestamp in its upper corner. Beside it was the official judging schedule beginning at 8:30. This establishes only that Ms. Cole acted before the panel convened, Dr. Shaw said. It does not establish why. Vanessa folded her hands. Because I received an urgent concern. From whom? A member of the event community. Name? I was asked to protect confidentiality. Richard spoke before Dr. Shaw could continue. Donors and volunteers must be able to raise concerns without fear of retaliation. Several heads nodded. Once again, his explanation sounded responsible. Daniel remained seated. He did not interrupt. Dr. Shaw brought up the second record. The original floor plan showing Eli's project assigned to the second row, then the black handwritten instruction moving it to storage wall. A photograph followed of the supposedly broken outlet powering a coffee warmer that same morning. Reed looked toward Vanessa. You reported an electrical failure. That was the information given to me. By whom? Facilities, I believe. All eyes moved toward Daniel. He rose slowly. The auditorium lights reflected along the metal ring of keys at his hip. No work order was filed, he said. Vanessa's expression remained gentle. Informal conversations happened during events. With who? I don't remember. Daniel placed the manila folder on the edge of Dr. Shaw's table. Every electrical complaint that morning is logged. The second row outlet was never reported. Vanessa's fingers pressed together. Then perhaps a volunteer misunderstood. Daniel did not challenge her tone. He opened the folder and slid forward a copy of the maintenance sheet. Maybe. His refusal to exaggerate made the room listen more closely. Dr. Shaw displayed the third item. Eli's notebook, the scorch mark along one page, the dated experiments, the $6.43 receipt, and the 6-week lab schedule. Then came the image of the 3 torn staple holes and the copier scan at 4:18 p.m. Vanessa leaned toward the microphone. I have already explained that. I scanned the pages for safety review. You first said you could not recall scanning them, Dr. Shaw replied. I was answering under pressure. You also stated the scanner generated the file name grid_final from a page header. The enlarged scan appeared. No header was visible. Administrative software can assign names from internal tags. The explanation was technical enough to slow the room again. Richard nodded as if the matter had been settled. Exactly. Metadata often looks suspicious when removed from context. Dr. Shaw's gaze moved to Daniel. Mr. Mercer, do you believe the file name proves intentional theft? No. Richard's eyebrows lifted slightly. Vanessa's shoulders relaxed. It appeared, for a moment, that Daniel had surrendered the strongest claim. He walked to the side of the stage but stopped several feet from the evidence table. It proves someone named the file. The access records tell us who opened it. The drafts tell us what happened after. Dr. Shaw displayed the 2 schematics. On Eli's early page, relays 2 and 3 were reversed, crossed out, and corrected later. On the Hale project, the polished diagram preserved the same reverse notation while the written explanation described the corrected behavior. parent near the aisle stopped whispering. The projector fan became suddenly distinct. "A common drafting mistake," Richard said. "One that students make when using the same educational materials." Eli looked toward Dr. Shaw, then raised one finger toward his notebook. "The next page fixes it," he said. His voice shook, but the sentence was clear. "The other project has my first mistake and my later explanation together." Dr. Shaw turned the page on. The screen. The correction was dated 3 weeks before the competing file had been created. Then she showed the audit trail. The Hale Foundation account opening the scan pages at 11:47 p.m., followed 19 minutes later by the insertion of an image named grid_final into the competing presentation. Richard removed his glasses and wiped them slowly. "My assistant used the foundation phone," he said. "I have confirmed that she was working late. She believed the file came from an approved resource folder. It was a new explanation, prepared and plausible." "Her name?" Dr. Shaw asked. Richard gave it. "She is willing to provide a statement." Vanessa exhaled carefully, as though relieved that a procedural misunderstanding had finally found its proper owner. Reed looked at Dr. Shaw. "That may account for the access." "It may," she said. The room shifted toward Richard again. A staff assistant using a shared account could explain the midnight access. An innocent file taken from the wrong folder could explain the copied mistake. For several seconds, it seemed the adults might reduce everything to negligence and leave no one responsible. Daniel opened the service folder. Was the assistant in the building that night? Richard's head turned. She worked remotely. Then her statement cannot explain the camera. Vanessa's face changed by less than an inch. "The footage is corrupted. The main file is." Daniel removed a maintenance ticket, a service log, and a page bearing a hardware serial number. He placed them in a straight line beneath the projector light. "Last winter, the copier corridor lost camera power during an outage. The replacement controller was approved with local backup storage so footage would survive another network failure." Reed stared at the papers. "You installed it?" "I completed the work order." "Did you access the recording?" "No." Daniel looked toward the district technology officer standing near the stage steps. "I preserved the path to it. They should open it." Vanessa leaned toward Reed. "This is highly irregular. A facilities employee cannot introduce surveillance material without privacy review." "He isn't introducing the footage," Dr. Shaw said. "He is introducing the authorized service record proving it may exist." Vanessa's voice tightened. "That system was never intended for academic investigations." Daniel looked at her. "Neither was the copier." The sentence landed quietly. No one laughed. He did not want laughter. He wanted the truth to remain heavier than humiliation. Richard's fingers moved toward his phone, then stopped when the technology officer connected a secured laptop to the auditorium projector. The service ticket appeared first, carrying Reed's approval signature, the controller's serial number, and the line local failover storage enabled. The officer inserted a read-only drive. A folder appeared with dates and camera identifiers. Dr. Shaw asked the audience to remain silent and warned that the image would be paused if any student appeared. Daniel returned to his seat beside Lily. Eli stayed near the table with Dr. Shaw, one hand resting on the black notebook. Vanessa's eyes remained fixed on the screen. Richard had stopped cleaning his glasses. The technology officer selected the copier corridor file, entered the time range from 11:41 to 11:53, and placed his finger above the key. On the screen, a frozen hallway waited beneath a timestamp of 11 hours 46 minutes and 58 seconds. Then the final backup file began to load. The backup file opened at 11 hours 46 minutes and 58 seconds, and the auditorium watched Vanessa Cole enter the copier corridor carrying Eli's black notebook beneath her arm. The image had no sound, only the gray-blue wash of security lighting and the white timestamp climbing 1 second at a time. She unlocked the faculty workroom, placed the notebook on the copier glass, and scanned 3 pages. At 11:48, Richard Hale stepped into the frame. He looked once toward the hallway, then lifted his phone and photographed the copier screen while the file name final glowed above the scanned pages. No assistant appeared. No volunteer used the account. No misunderstanding passed through the corridor. Richard himself stood beneath the camera, holding the registered Foundation phone that had opened Eli's file. The projector fan whined above the stage. Somewhere in the back row, a seat cushion released a slow breath of air. Vanessa's leather folder slipped half an inch across the table before she caught it. Richard did not reach for his glasses this time. He stared at the screen as the footage continued. Vanessa removed the pages from the copier, returned only the notebook to her bag, and handed Richard a small paper note. He read it, folded it, and placed it in his jacket pocket. The timestamp reached 11:50. Then the image froze. The district technology officer turned from the laptop. "The checksum matches the controller record," he said. "The file is authentic. It has not been edited since capture." Richard leaned toward the microphone, but his first breath produced no words. When he finally spoke, his voice had lost its practiced warmth. "The footage lacks context." Dr. Shaw remained standing at the center of the review table. "What context would change the fact that you accessed a student's private work?" Vanessa asked for an outside review. "Why did you photograph the screen?" "For documentation." "Why was the diagram added to your son's presentation 19 minutes later?" Richard looked toward Vanessa. She had lowered her eyes to the leather folder, as if the right page inside it might still contain an exit. "We were preparing the strongest possible project for the school," she said. Her voice was dry now, each word measured separately. Eli's work showed promise, but he was not prepared to present at the level expected of a regional finalist. The sentence moved through the room like cold air under a door. Not denial, justification. Dr. Shaw nodded to the technology officer. "Display the internal messages." A new window appeared on the screen. The district server had preserved the exchange, complete with account names, device metadata, and timestamps. Vanessa's message was first. "Eli's project is too strong to risk putting on stage with a child who cannot finish a sentence under pressure." Richard's reply appeared beneath it. "We can make it look professional enough to represent Franklin. Leave the raw notes in the committee folder." The auditorium went silent in a way the gym never had. The ventilation still rattled. The projector still hummed. The phone vibrated once inside someone's coat and was silenced so quickly the movement sounded loud. Eli held the black notebook against his chest, but his grip slowly loosened. Daniel watched the boy's shoulders fall away from his ears. Lily reached across the empty seat between them and wrapped 2 fingers around her father's hand. Vanessa looked toward Eli, then away before their eyes could meet. "I was trying to protect the school," she said, "and protect him from a public failure." Dr. Shaw's expression did not harden. It became quieter. "You knew the project was strong." Vanessa said nothing. "You knew he had created something competitive." Still nothing. "And instead of helping him present his own work, you removed his name from it." Richard pushed his chair back an inch. Its metal feet scraped the stage and stopped. "My son did not know where the diagram came from." Daniel rose before the room could turn toward the boy seated near the aisle. "Then leave him out of this." Every face shifted toward Daniel. He did not look at Richard with anger. He looked at the competing student, who had gone pale beneath the auditorium lights. "The children are not responsible for what adults placed in front of them." Richard's mouth closed. Daniel returned his attention to Eli. "The truth does not need another child to carry the shame." Dr. Shaw let that sentence settle before she opened the final evidence summary. One by one, the pieces appeared across the screen. The red disqualified card signed at 8:12, 18 minutes before judging. The altered floor plan moving Eli's project to the storage wall. The working outlet Vanessa had called defective. The 6 weeks of lab reservations. The $6.43 receipt matching the used relay inside the model. The scorched notebook pages. The 3 missing sheets scanned at 4:18. The Hale Foundation access at 11:47. The repeated drafting error. The live test with unbroken tamper seals. The hallway footage showing Daniel never opened the circuit. And now the backup video and internal messages. None of the items alone had been enough. Together, they left no space for the story Vanessa had built around Eli. Dr. Shaw placed, both hands flat on the table. The plagiarism finding against Eli Brooks is vacated effective immediately. His disqualification is void. His authorship will be referred to an independent technical review for permanent confirmation and protection. Reed stood and walked toward the model. The red card remained sealed in its evidence sleeve. He lifted it from the table, held it for a moment beneath the stage lights, then placed it inside the district investigator's file rather than tearing it up. "This will remain part of the record," he said. "Not as a judgment against Eli, but as evidence of the judgment this school made without hearing him." He faced the auditorium. "Ms. Cole is suspended from all competition duties pending formal investigation. Foundation access to student records is revoked immediately. The current science fair results are canceled and will be reviewed by an outside panel." Vanessa's pen fell from her hand. It struck the table once, rolled toward the edge, and stopped against the closed leather folder. Richard stared at the foundation banner behind him as though seeing the school crest for the first time. No one applauded. The silence was not celebration. It was the weight of adults realizing how easily they had accepted a red card over a child's name. Dr. Shaw turned to Eli. "You do not owe this room a performance, but the decision to demonstrate is yours." Eli looked at Daniel. Daniel did not nod or instruct him. He only stepped away from the model and opened the space in front of it. Eli placed his notebook on the table. His hand still shook, but he removed the center bulb himself, checked the meter, and pressed the switch. The fan began to turn. One branch went dark. The remaining bulbs flashed, softened, then held their light in a steady balance. Eli watched the numbers settle exactly where the final equation said they would. "I didn't want to make the brightest room," he said. His voice caught, and he paused until the room allowed him the time Vanessa had not. "I wanted the other rooms to carry the load when one went dark." The projector fan, the ventilation, and the faint current inside the model became the only sounds anyone could hear. Daniel stood behind him in the same blue uniform people had dismissed that morning, one hand resting near the carpenter pencil in his pocket. He did not smile at Vanessa's defeat. He looked at Eli, then at Lily, and breathed slowly as if holding the room steady until the boy no longer had to. Dr. Shaw closed the evidence file. "Mr. Mercer," she said, "the district will need your technical account of the backup system and your role in preserving this evidence." Daniel glanced at the red card inside the investigator's folder, then at the model still carrying light across its remaining branches. Recognition had finally reached him, but it had arrived carrying a choice. Whether to accept the power the room was offering, or use it to make sure Eli's name could never be taken from his work again.